This is the Bulldog show called Citadel Greyline. I'm your host, John Rawl. We're back here to talk all things Citadel Bulldog sports, and we've got a little bit of a win streak going for all you dog fans, and the Citadel is your official SoCon State of South Carolina Palmetto champions after dispatching Furman and Wofford. Jeff Hartsell, I am so excited about what's going on with Brent Thompson's team.
How about that? There ought to be a trophy for the state championship, shouldn't there?
I think so. We'll get them one if they don't have one. But what a great show we've got lined up for you. We're going to talk about those big wins. And Jeff Hartsell is going to report on all things athletics, including what's going on with the baseball team. Jeff, here we are with our penultimate show of this spring. We'll have one more show next week, but, man, it's gone by quick.
It sure has, and I'm glad you explained what penultimate means.
Yeah, go look that one up.
Just kidding. What a difference a couple of wins makes, right? After the Samford game, Brent Thompson felt he had to say that this is not the end of Citadel football after they lost 55-7. And of course, they've come back the next 2 weeks to beat Wofford and Furman, two of their three main rivals, in my opinion. And they have a chance to finish out the season with victories over Wofford, Furman, and VMI. Their three main rivals, and that hasn't happened since the SoCon championship season of 2016. So that would put a whole different spin on what's been a really trying season for Citadel football and send them into the summer and to next season with some confidence.
26-7, El Cid gets the victory, and it was a great win, the final home game of the spring season. And we're going to talk about how that happened and a complete win. We're talking special teams with a big effort. The defense continues to impress, and when the offense needed to get their motor running, that indeed happened, and it was a much-needed win, a much-needed home win. Hadn't had a home win in quite some time on that beautiful turf, the first win there on Sampson Field's artificial turf. And that was a wonderful Saturday in Charleston, South Carolina. Last weekend, this weekend, it'll be the last game of the spring season, a trip to Lexington where the Bulldogs and the Keydets have the battle for the Silver Shako going on. If you would like to be part of the show, easy to do that. All you have to do is text us right now. Pick up the phone with a question or comment. We've got some questions that were kind of left over from last week that we'll get to. Our number is 843-779-8496, 843-779-8496. Would love to hear from you if you've got a question, comment for Jeff about what the Citadel Bulldogs, what's been going right for this team here as they wind things down in this spring season. But Jeff, I mentioned it in that win over the Furman Paladins, the much-hated Furman Paladins. First off, a unit we don't talk a whole lot about on this program, special teams, and a great effort there, getting some points on the old board.
Right, they blocked a Furman punt early in the game, and it was Kyler Estes who I think what happened is he pushed the Furman blocker back into the punter, and the punt bounced off the back of the Furman player. So Kyler gets credit for the block punt, and then Hayden Johnson, a freshman linebacker and another player I've never heard of, recovered it in the end zone for the touchdown. So great effort there. And then Furman botched a kickoff catch. They failed to field a short kickoff, and Citadel was able to recover that. Rylan Ayers was Johnny on the spot and recovered that, and that led to another Citadel score. So special teams really took advantage of some situations. Unfortunately, kicker Colby Kittner didn't have his best day, missed a field goal and an extra point. So they might need him against VMI, so let's hope he can regain his stroke this week during practice.
Now, special teams in the last couple of years has been a topic of conversation with Brent Thompson's way he does it there at the Citadel. Who is the so-called special teams coordinator right now for the Citadel?
Oh, I believe that's Turner West.
Okay.
So but you'll have to check me on that.
Checkmate on that one. And you mentioned Estes there, Kyler Estes, with a great play on special teams. Now, here's a guy who plays a lot of the games. He's been playing since his knob year. I remember seeing him play against Alabama that year in Tuscaloosa and actually meeting his folks on the way out of the stadium that day. And although he may not show up on the every highlight reel, he's a big part of a lot of plays. In fact, we've got to give special love to that defensive unit that Estes is normally a part of, because we had a pick six in that game that I think, if you go back and look at the film, I'm pretty sure Kyler, he had something to do with the pressure there on the quarterback and that errant pass that ended up being intercepted from Hamp Sisson, the Furman quarterbacks. He got the interception, and a player for the Bulldogs, Jeff, to echo or follow the great Chris Berman, rumbling and stumbling down that right sideline into the end zone.
That's right. That was big old Jay Smith from West Ashley High School here in Charleston. And Jay had a similar play, if you remember, last year at Army, where he picked the ball out of the air and got tackled at the goal line as he rumbled down to try to score a big man touchdown. But this time he made it all the way into the end zone. They list Jay at 6'1", 270. He's more than 270. So he's a big guy. He plays well on the defensive front. We should mention Bradley Peary. You talk about a big guy, 6'5", 300. This kid is. And with Dalton Owens out, Bradley got a lot of snaps this week and played well. I think he had 6 tackles, a couple for loss, and really played a big role in shutting down Furman's run game. The defense played this week without Willie Eubanks, the All-American linebacker. He was held out. Still's got a dinged up shoulder, so they held him out of the Furman game. Hopefully he will be back this week against VMI, because they will need to be at full strength against VMI's powerful offense.
Yeah, that's a big game coming up. In fact, some breaking news when I was getting ready for the show about this weekend's game. Breaking news there out of the Post on the VMI campus. So we'll have that in just a second. But, Jeff, I know you had a chance to hear from Brent Thompson after the game. I know he had to be excited that, again, all 3 phases of the Bulldogs' plan came and looked great this past weekend.
He was, and he said this is the payoff for all the struggles they've been through. The bookstore suspensions are over.
Oh,
didn't have to discuss that against Furman. So they were, except for the injuries to Dalton Owens and Willie Eubanks, they were about as whole as they've been all season. And you talk about excited. Brent was really excited on Monday when he looked ahead to next year. He said about 35 new players will be coming in between COVID returners, guys coming off injuries, and then the new freshmen coming in. So he's really excited about what the roster is going to look like next year. Jalen Adams with almost a whole season, 8 games. He did miss 1 after that concussion of experience at quarterback. So he'll enter the fall as a very experienced freshman quarterback.
And what an amazing run he had right up the middle and to the left, and pretty much went untouched there for an important touchdown for the Citadel offense.
He scored 2 touchdowns, actually, 25 yards and 43 yards. Brent said he still misses a read every now and then, but that's a matter of experience, and he will get there. But the Citadel run game, the 2 B-backs, Nathan Storch and Clay Harris, combined for about 111 yards between them. And then Cooper Wallace had another good day running the ball around the edge. So the Citadel ran the ball 70 times against Furman. That's a big number. Only tried 3 passes. None of them were completed. And the wind really played a big role on Saturday. The ball, Raleigh Webb got open deep, and Jalen Adams overthrew him. That was with the wind. And then Raleigh, on a halfback pass, he got a step on his guy going into the wind, and Cooper Wallace left that ball short. So I think the wind had a lot to do with the game Saturday, and Brent Thompson said he wanted to be with the wind in the fourth quarter, and I think that was a smart decision.
Jeff, I know things are completely weird right now with the way that you cover this football team, but going into this season, we had 2 stars. We had Eubanks on defense and Raleigh Webb on offense, the veteran guys who really didn't even have to come back. And we know about Eubanks and some of the injury woes that he's had. Raleigh Webb really has just missed out on kind of the highlight plays this year, maybe 1 or 2 things I can think of, but you would maybe have guessed that he would have been much more in the press with his playmaking ability. Have you had a chance to talk to him? How's he getting through this season, and that's really unlike anything we've ever seen?
I have not had a chance to talk to him during the season. I talked to him before the season about his decision to come back. And, he could have transferred to a team that throws the ball more and maybe tried to showcase his skills that way. But it was more important to him to stick with his teammates at the Citadel and trust the process that Jalen Adams would get better throughout the year. But as it turns out, Raleigh's getting open just like he always has. There's no question about that. But they have had trouble getting the ball to him at the right time, getting the ball out on time, getting the ball thrown accurately to him. But he's still playing just as hard as he ever has. You can see him out there blocking number 22, playing on kickoff return, playing on special teams. So really a lot of respect for Raleigh and the team player that he really is.
And Jeff, as I mentioned, with him coming back this year, and as we mentioned, he really didn't have to, nor did Eubanks. This could be the last game either one of those guys suit up and play for the Bulldogs this coming week against VMI. Have you heard anything about their plans going beyond this spring season?
I have not. I've not had a chance to ask them about that, nor have I asked Brent Thompson, but I'm sure that will be a subject of inquiry after the VMI game. It's my understanding that they both could come back.
They could.
The spring season does not count against their eligibility. That would be about the 7th year at the Citadel for Raleigh Webb. I don't know if he's had enough yet or not, but that'll be an interesting decision coming into the fall.
And I noticed last week with the last home game that the Citadel had, there was a post put out there of all the so-called seniors, and so we want to salute all those. I don't have that in front of me right now, but there was about 5 or 6 I think I remember seeing.
I think there were 4.
Okay,
and
4.
Hayden Haas was one of those, the starting center. So that's 4 is the number of guys that can't come back in the fall. That's it. So the roster should be in pretty good shape in the fall.
We'll keep an eye on what's going on there. And before we move on to what happens this week for Brent Thompson's ball club, I've been critical on this football team, and many of the fans have also been critical. When you have the losing streak that they've had this year and things just were not going good, especially after that Samford loss, it was really tough. But you got to give credit when credit's due, and a 2-game win streak, you can't stress how impressive it is to always beat Wofford, because they've had the Citadel's number for a long time, and the way the Citadel rallied in that game, so impressive. And then the other thing, beating Furman, and they are the historic rival of El Cid, so a great win there. And before we move on to talk about the matchup in Lexington, Jeff, as good as things are for the Citadel over these last 2 weeks, you have to wonder what is going on at Furman, because, as I said, I've been critical not only of the athletic team, the football team in Charleston, but also the entire athletics program at the Citadel has not exactly excelled in all sports here lately. And at Furman, the football dynasty seems to really be in trouble. They don't even have a baseball team anymore. I mean, that was shocking. So what are you hearing about what's going on in North Greenville?
So Citadel fans should, when they get down in the dumps, they should just look at Furman, and at least Citadel has a baseball team, even if they're struggling.
Yeah.
So things not good in Greenville right now. The offense is struggling as much as more than any Furman team I've ever seen, and not quite sure the reason for that. They've had a couple injuries on the offensive line, but they do have some veterans there. They have a veteran quarterback, veteran running back. They have some talented receivers, as you saw on Saturday. That kid made a couple of Citadel defensive backs whiff there inside the 5-yard line on their touchdown. But their offense is really, really not good right now. So Clay Hendricks has a lot of work to do in the offseason. As Furman was picked to finish near the top of the conference this spring, and Wofford was picked to win, and they're not even playing anymore. So this spring has been very different. Each team has had its own challenges, and I think Chattanooga and Wofford opted out. Their coaches had good reasons for that. You can't argue with that, but I do think the Citadel deserves some credit for sticking it out. They had injuries too. Willie Eubanks, they're probably their best player, got injured. Jalen Adams, their quarterback, suffered a concussion, and yet they've stuck it out, and they're going to finish the season, play all 8 games after they play VMI. So, yeah, credit is due there at some level.
And let me remind you, in case you missed out on the broadcast that ESPN put together for the big victory over Furman, as I mentioned, it's always good to beat these guys. And the Citadel now, I think, has won 2 in a row in the series. The last time they played in Greenville in a rainstorm, it was a convincing win for Brent Thompson's team there, I think, in 2019. But here we are, winning 5 of the last 7 against Furman, again, FCS power throughout history. And what a good feeling, especially knowing how many Citadel football players come from the upstate, how big a deal Furman has been, and just to have that kind of supremacy. Again, let me remind you, the Citadel Bulldogs 2021, your South Carolina SoCon FCS champions. Love it.
There you go.
Don't mind if I brag.
Have at it.
All right, Jeff, good news there. Let's talk about this weekend. VMI has a chance to win a SoCon championship. The Bulldogs can be a fly in the ointment.
How about that? VMI is 5-1. Their coach, Scott Wackenheim, has done a fantastic job the last couple years at VMI, really turning that program around. And they have a chance to win their first SoCon title since 1977. So that would be a major achievement. And it's kind of ironic, I think, I guess is the right word. If Citadel fans had to choose a team besides the Bulldogs to root for in the SoCon, it would surely be VMI because of the similar natures of the schools, and the players have to go through similar things. The coaches face similar challenges in recruiting, and yet the Citadel has a chance to go up there and spoil and wreck their championship hopes. And you better believe they want to do that. They want to get that Silver Shako back in Cygnus Hall where they believe it belongs. And so, it's kind of funny that they're going to go up there and try to wreck VMI's championship hopes.
There we have it again. I know there's been at least one week, possibly 2, that the Keydets have had injury problems with their quarterback that's going to ultimately play for Maryland in the fall. Where do we stand with their offense right now?
Yeah, that might be the saddest part of this season in the SoCon was the season-ending injury suffered by Reese Udinsky, who's really a great player and a great kid. I had a chance to talk to him a couple of times and really impressed with him. He suffered a season-ending injury, and his future at Maryland is probably in doubt. You know, he could have left VMI and gone to a Power 5 school for spring practice this spring and already be at his new school, but he wanted to finish out the spring season with his teammates. He came back to VMI, even though he is committed to Maryland in the fall. But now this injury, I think, I'm not sure quite the extent of it, but from what I understand, it casts his future next season at Maryland in doubt. So that's really a tough part of this year for VMI and the SoCon. They have a freshman quarterback who stepped in and really done well. Seth Morgan is his name, and they haven't really missed a beat, even though they did lose to ETSU 24-20 in their last game. But he is completing 77% of his passes, and VMI throws the ball 43 times a game. So the Citadel secondary, which has really improved over the course of the last month, they really struggled early in the season. You won't forget those 2 opening play 75-yard TD passes against Mercer and Chattanooga. They've come a long way since then. You saw Andy Davis flying around in the secondary last week. Wilson Hendricks made an interception. Javante Middleton is really coming on. And Parrish Gordon, he's the transfer from Old Dominion. He's kind of the old head back there, keeping everything organized. So they've come a long way, and they're going to be tested against VMI. VMI has a 6'5" receiver, Jacob Harris. You might remember him from VMI's win at Johnson Haygood Stadium in 2019. He is a matchup nightmare. So Citadel will have he caught 15 passes in one game earlier this year. I think he has 56 catches on the year so far. So he is weapon number one for VMI, and he's going to be a key to a Citadel victory is slowing him down.
Now, Wackenheim's team had a chance to run away with the SoCon. They lost their last game, a game at home against ETSU. Then they had a game canceled because of Chattanooga's decision to not play football anymore. So this is a game they're hosting there at Lexington after being off for 2 weeks. And the big news I was going to tell everybody is before I was able to come on here and tell you all about the matchup for the Silver Shako, it is a sellout. And that's the big story coming from VMI, a sellout game there on campus at the Post.
Yeah, I'm not sure what a sellout means these days. I think it's only like 3,000. Yes, but all the tickets are gone for the Military Classic of the South in Lexington, Virginia this weekend. And it's a big game, the biggest game for VMI since 1977, I guess.
Yeah.
A chance to win the SoCon title. And even though it's spring, even though all the games didn't get played, it'll go in the record book as a SoCon championship if VMI can get it. Mercer at 5-2 also has a chance to win the SoCon title should VMI lose. And John, I don't have in front of me who Mercer plays this week. I'm not sure if you do. But if they win,
they may play ETSU.
ETSU, okay.
I think.
But anyway, if they win, they have a chance to be the SoCon champion as well.
Well, again, way to go, VMI. We're pulling for you, except for not this week. If the Citadel can win and they can somehow win the SoCon, then good for them. But it should be a fun game. It's going to be a 1:30 kick there from Lexington, Virginia. And this will be on that Ingalls network. Pete Yanity and more on the call once again for the Citadel Bulldogs.
That's right. So I think it'll be on local TV here in Charleston. I'm not sure about that, but ESPN Plus, in my opinion, has done a really great job this year with the broadcast. So I've watched all the away games on ESPN Plus and have been impressed with the job they've done. And of course, Luke Morrow and Lee Glaze will have the call on Citadel Radio Network. And I just wanted to mention every week Luke asks Lee Glaze for his memories about playing against that week's opponent. And I've really enjoyed hearing Lee's memories, and I'm sure he'll have some good ones playing against VMI as well.
Yes, great to hear that 1980s wide receiver legend with Tom Moore's program at Citadel, Lee Glazen, and love what he does. Although sometimes it's hard for him to track down the coach right after a game, depending on a win or loss. But I know he's doing his darndest out there. And while we're talking about ESPN, Jeff, I've got a vent. That's one of the things that's required here on this show. This isn't about the Citadel. This is about ESPN. I realize that Jackson State out of the SWAC has Deion Sanders as their head coach now. I just think it's unfortunate in this time where FCS football is playing spring football, a chance to give FCS more attention, that ESPN has put Jackson State on their national platform, ESPN, ESPN2, and I think ESPNU as well. Almost every week, JSU has suited up when there were other conferences, other games that could have been put on there. And I'm always championing for all of FCS. And I don't think it's quite fair for Jackson State just because they've got Deion Sanders to kind of hog the cameras. There, I said it.
Well, that hasn't been a disappointing part of this spring is that there hasn't been more national platforms for FCS football besides ESPN Plus, that they haven't made it to ESPN2 or 3 or ESPNU. I did see Delaware and Delaware State. I think they were on ESPNU the other night, but it has been disappointing that it hasn't worked out better. I'm not sure. From what I understand, there just wasn't interest from the ESPN types.
Okay.
So too bad.
Well, early on, Alabama State's head coach in Montgomery, he even came out and said that he kind of liked the idea of the spring football, and according to him, he wouldn't have a problem going forward with spring football only for at least the SWAC because of the attention, because of, I guess, just the fact that it kind of stands out. But things have certainly changed, and what we've seen, the way Brent Thompson has kind of mapped out how he's used his players, or lack thereof, keeping a very small roster, the Citadel certainly can't wait to get back, it appears, to a normal fall football edition of the Citadel football. Hey, let's talk about our great sponsors, and let's talk about Knob Knowledge to give you a chance to win $25 from BigRedPalmetto.store. Now, last week, we did something kind of cool. We actually asked 2 questions related to the Citadel Wrestling program because we had our guest, Thomas Ravenel, class of 1985, a former Citadel wrestler, a former statewide official in South Carolina, and then a reality show star of Southern Charm and other things that he's been in the headlines a lot. And we had 2 questions asked that we've got 2 winners. Man, Jeff, you missed out on the fun. You had to go on assignment with something else. But we had, again, Ravenel on, and he was quite colorful, you could say. And we got a lot of attention with that interview, and a lot of it was not very kind to T-Rav.
Well, he's had, as you say, he's had a colorful life. Been in the headlines for some different things that might not make every Citadel alum proud. So, yeah.
But he's getting a second chance, and he's out of the reality show business. So, Jeff, there's an opening for you there.
Well, I think he might be past his second chance. I'm not sure.
Well, I'm just saying if the Hartsells might be an upcoming reality show, we got to keep Charleston and that area on the national scene. So, if you're open to having cameras follow you, there's an opening now thanks to Thomas bowing out. But, yeah, we got a lot of criticism, actually, and a few comments, positive comments about Ravenel. So check that out. One of the reasons we did that interview is, well, we wanted to see what people thought, because here's a guy that I've never really had – I've not really seen him talk about his Citadel experience at all. And so we reached out to him. He's an alumnus. We gave him a shot. We've reached out to other alumni. We've asked them to come on. We are waiting right now. We're hoping next week's going to be our final show. I've got a request in to talk to General Walters, president of the Citadel. We're hoping that's going to happen, but it's not up to me. It's up to the Public Affairs Office. So we're going to hopefully have a great guest on next week as we wrap up this spring edition. Now, we did have those 2 trivia questions. Let me remind you what those were and who our winners were. Since Ravenel had been a one-time wrestler, we had 2 wrestling-themed questions. One was, could you tell us which 2 countries the Citadel has had 4 All-Americans come from? 2 were from one country and 2 were from the other country. And our winner, Jeff, you're going to love this, our winner was the mother of the aforementioned Kyler Estes, Hope Estes, Tallahassee, Florida. She got the guess right. The 2 countries of Citadel Wrestling All-Americans, the good old U.S. of A. was one, and the great country of Mongolia was the other. And I think you probably had that guess correct, too.
I did, and I want you to tell us who the 2 wrestlers were.
No, I don't think so. I knew you were going to do that, Jeff Hartsell. Our other trivia question, Jeff, was name the 2 years that the Citadel wrestling team had Southern Conference championships. And we want to congratulate John R. Suggs on that correct guess. Those years, 1967 and 2004. 1967, sadly for you, Jeff, just after the great Jeff Hartsell was a wrestler at the Citadel, but not the same Jeff Hartsell.
That's right. He was a great wrestler at the Citadel, I think, early 60s, late 50s?
I think it was early 60s.
And, yeah. So no relation, as it turns out. That's pretty incredible.
But you could probably pin somebody down on the mat if you needed to.
I could sit on them.
Yeah, all right. Yeah. So those were our 2 winners for last week. Congratulations to, again, Mr. Suggs and Hope Estes, who's a loyal watcher of the show, and we appreciate that. And keep watching, because evidently it's helping inspire that Citadel football team, especially that special teams and that D. All right, let's ask our trivia question for this week, and we're going to make it real easy. I think this is a pretty easy one in honor of the Silver Shako going down this week. Our trivia question that you can text your answer to 843-779-8496 is, in 2019, the Citadel lost to VMI for the first time in a long time. Could you please tell me, the audience out there, not Jeff Hartsell, what state was the last victory in the series for VMI in prior to the 2019 victory in Charleston? What state? You got 50 choices out there, and tell me which state hosted that win for VMI, the last win for them prior to winning against the Citadel in 2019. If you can tell me what state that was in, 843-779-8496. I'd say you got two good options for guesses there. So tell me which one, perhaps 843-779-8496, and you'll get a nice $25 gift certificate to Big Red Palmetto store as we, again, are wrapping up the gray line here for the spring. One more show left next week, so we'll have one more winner, we hope. But they got to answer this one today. Just text us 843-779-8496. All right, Jeff, football, we got that out of the way. Let's talk about the Citadel baseball team. Unfortunately, struggles continue for Tony Skole's ball club.
They do. They've lost 12 in a row now after getting swept at Samford over the weekend. The big news, of course, is that the all-SoCon second baseman Tyler Corbett is no longer with the team. And Tyler has been their best player since he set foot on campus as a freshman, in my opinion. He decided to enter the transfer portal in order to start preparing for a graduate career at another school. And when he entered the portal, that made him no longer eligible to play baseball for the Citadel this year. That is not an NCAA rule. That is a Citadel policy that once you enter the portal, you are removed from your team. So there's some, I don't know if dispute is the right word, about how aware Tyler was of this policy, but there's no doubt he should have been aware of this policy. I don't know if that would have changed his decision or not. There's also some dispute about whether this is the right policy for the Citadel to have. In my own opinion, it would be better to have a more flexible policy where you reserve the right to remove a player from his team, but you don't have to. Now, I understand they want to protect themselves. You don't want a malcontent in the locker room after he decides he wants to transfer. That was not the case with Tyler Corbett. As you know, baseball rosters around the country are loaded right now because of the COVID eligibility rules, where last season did not count because it was an abbreviated season and players could come back. So I think Tyler was concerned about finding a spot and some scholarship money for his graduate career at a different school and wanted to get an early start on that process. And the way you do that is by putting your name in the portal, and other schools can contact you and you can contact them. But as it turns out, that made him ineligible to finish out this season. And, that's just the last thing Tony Skole needed. He's got enough on his plate without finishing out without his best player. So that's what happened last week. Sad circumstance all the way around because I'm told Tyler wanted to finish out the season with his teammates, and he is not able to do so for wherever the fault may lie.
I know when you broke that story, I had to go look up. I think he's listed as a junior. So here's a guy that's entering the transfer portal. He ought to be a junior in the Corps of Cadets, possibly is a senior. And
he graduates in May.
Okay, good.
He's already got his ring. He graduates in May, and he could have returned to the Citadel. Obviously, they have graduate school, but he decided he wanted to, and he's proven he can play at a higher level than the Citadel. He's hitting like 370 this year, and he's hit the ball well ever since he arrived on campus. He's a fantastic player in the field, and he wants to go to graduate school elsewhere and maybe try his abilities at a little bit higher level. There's nothing wrong with that. He'll have earned his degree and his ring, and he's given the Citadel 3 seasons. One of them was cut short through no fault of his own, obviously, last year. So, the graduate school at the Citadel has been a huge benefit to athletics over the years because players can graduate in 3 years and keep playing for the Citadel and start working on their graduate degrees with scholarship money. And that's an advantage that schools like Wofford and VMI do not have. On the other hand, when a player like VMI quarterback Reese Udinsky graduates, he has no choice but to move on. He cannot continue to play for VMI because they don't have a graduate school. So the Citadel's transfer portal policy needs to be a little different because players can enter the portal and then you have a period of indecision. Are they going to come back to the Citadel for their graduate school, or are they going to go elsewhere? And that leaves the coaches in a no man's land as far as recruiting goes. Do you replace that kid? Do you wait to see if he comes back? So the Citadel does have to protect themselves at some level with students that are graduating going into the portal.
Mm-hmm.
But I think you can do that with a more flexible policy as well. So if you simply reserve the right to remove an athlete from his team when he enters the portal, I think that covers your bases right there. And a policy that says you have to separate from the team immediately leaves no wiggle room, in my opinion. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Diamond Dogs 1-10 in SoCon play, coming back after being swept. And I know in that first game they played on Friday night, I actually watched a little bit of that. The Citadel roared out to a several runs lead and ended up losing that one by one run. Just a tough road trip all the way to the Birmingham suburb of Homewood and losing to those fake Bulldogs. Now the Citadel comes back home, midweek game against the Jacksonville Dolphins, and then Tony Skole's old employer, the ETSU Bucks, are in town for a 3-game series here this weekend. And Tony Skole's old teammate, Chris Lamonis, want to remind everybody, Mississippi State, the Bulldogs, a college baseball dynasty, will be coming to Johnson-Hagan Stadium on May 5th. That's a Wednesday. That's going to be a game played at Riley Park. Rare to see an SEC West team coming into the Citadel's own ballpark. It's a 7 p.m. first pitch against a very good nationally ranked Chris Lamonis class of 1992 coached Citadel baseball team. MSU, Mississippi State. Oh, the Bulldogs ringing them cowbells heading in to Charleston for our game coming up soon. So that's what's going on with Citadel baseball. Jeff, anything else on your docket before we get out of here?
No, we got the season finale this week at VMI. Should be a fun one and an important game for the Keydets and an important game for the Bulldogs to keep this momentum going heading into the off season and what they hope will be a much better fall season in 2021. They open up with Coastal Carolina.
Yes, they do. And again, remind people, Jeff, because this one kind of was a little bit of a shock to me last week when you announced about a schedule change for this football season that's coming up in only a couple months.
Right. They had to. The series with South Carolina State, it was supposed to be a home-and-home series starting this year. That's been delayed. South Carolina State scheduled a game, I believe, at New Mexico State. So the Citadel had to scramble to find an opponent. They're going to play North Greenville, Division II school out of Travelers Rest, I think it is.
Tigerville.
And Tigerville. You're right, Tigerville. And so that will be the game they play instead of South Carolina State.
And that, again, a change there on the 2021 fall schedule for Citadel Bulldog Sports. All right, we have to remind everybody that here at the Citadel Gray Line, in addition to BigRedPalmetto.store, we're also brought in part by IPS Packaging and Automation. They are a name that you can trust. Since way back in the bicentennial year of 1976, IPS Packaging and Automation has been providing manufacturers and e-commerce companies with the very best packaging products and automation in the entire industry. IPS out of Fountain Inn, South Carolina, offers a complete line of packaging products from stretch films and 3M tapes to corrugated boxes, strapping, and automation. IPS Packaging, with Derek Murdoch, Citadel alum, in the lead. They will analyze and streamline your current methods to improve your packaging process. Give them a call, 800-277-7007. Again, 800-277-7007 to learn all about IPS Packaging and Automation. Visit them on their website, ipack.com, ipack.com. IPS Packaging and Automation is a proud supporter of Citadel Athletics. Go you hairy Bulldogs. All right, I stole that one from Georgia. We have a trivia winner, and I'm going to announce that we've lowered our standards once again, letting a member of the class of 1995 win this one. Thomas Scruggs out of Columbia, South Carolina. Marine veteran, thank you. You have the correct guess. Jeff, do you happen to know the answer to this question? The question was, name what state those VMI Keydets last won a game in the Citadel Series, the Silver Shako Series. What state was their last victory prior to winning in Charleston in 2019? Jeff Hartsell, do you know that answer?
I do know the answer, but first I want to say that I am in favor of Hawaii putting in a bid to host the game every year. So I'm hoping that the officials at the Hawaii Tourism Bureau will pay attention and put in a bid to host the Military Classic of the South every year. But the correct answer is Charlotte, North Carolina.
Very good, because if you go back to the early 2000s, there was a 2-game series that the Silver Shako was played at Memorial Stadium.
I believe that's correct, but my main memory is the weather was miserable both years.
The home, Jeff, of a certain World League football, I believe it was called, back in the 1970s. Do you remember that team that played there?
I do not.
The Charlotte Hornets.
And do you remember the logo for that game in Charlotte?
I do not, because I didn't go.
It was based on the Iwo Jima statue.
Oh.
But it had football players in that pose, and it was really cool. I liked it.
All right.
I'll have to see if I can find that.
Yeah, that was actually kind of a cool deal they tried to put on there in Charlotte, where the Citadel and VMI met roughly halfway for both schools, and the Corps cadets.
Both corps were there and marching, but the weather was just awful both years.
Weather was awful. It'd be nice to see if that would be possibly an option for Bank of America Stadium one day. Fill it up. 70,000 Citadel fans there in Charlotte to see that game. But, yeah, that is the correct answer. Is North Carolina was the last state that got a victory for the VMI, those rascals from Lexington.
They used to play the game elsewhere in Virginia, did they not?
Yeah, they played it when I was in school. They had the Oyster Bowl, which that was in Norfolk, and the Citadel with some great wins. I'll never forget one of those games in the early 90s was televised, and Travis Jervey, who went on to play for the Green Bay Packers and won a Super Bowl ring for the Pack, he reeled off about a 95-yard touchdown from the backfield in that win in Norfolk, Virginia. Do you know the first town that actually hosted the Citadel VMI series?
I do not.
It was also in Virginia. It was in Lynchburg, home of Liberty University. They hosted a Citadel VMI game back in 1920. Check your knowledge on that one. But, yeah, I think that was the only year that was played. But, yeah, these old rivals now. And it was a little surprising to me that in South Carolina, the only town and probably only place they played is Charleston. They didn't rotate it closer to the North Carolina line to make it easier for VMI.
There's some great stories associated with the Citadel VMI rivalry. I wrote about that a couple of years ago. The year they stole the elephant from a local TV station here in Charleston and drove him over the old Cooper River Bridge down to Johnson-Hagan Stadium. And I think there's been some Jeeps stolen on each campus over the years. And then, of course, the famous incident where the VMI female cheerleader gave the business to a Citadel knob on the sideline over there at Johnson-Hagan Stadium.
Yeah, and I don't think the Citadels recovered from that one.
A lot of good stuff in the Citadel VMI rivalry.
Back in the days when the Citadel had a visitor's side over there that was pretty big. These days, that's another thing. We've got to get our act together and get Johnson-Hagan Stadium complete. But maybe they'll have that ready.
They're trying to raise money for a new scoreboard as well.
Oh, we didn't know that. All right. Well, all that we cover again. Next week will be our final episode of Citadel Gray Line for this spring. Let's check the inbox, make sure we haven't had any other questions or complaints. It's really weird, Jeff, that when the Citadel reels off 2 straight wins, we're not getting questions about switching offenses.
And nobody wants to know when Brent Thompson's contract is up. That's
Yeah,
strange.
it's very strange. But we appreciate everybody for tuning in. Jeff, again, thank you for always being here. And we'll have one more time. I got my seersucker on. It's springtime. Put your seersucker on, y'all, and we'll get back here after the VMI, we hope, victory for Brent Thompson's team and get you ready for a couple of months off before we get back here for the fall football edition of Citadel Gray Line. Jeff Hartsell, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
All right, and that will wrap up our program here today. Again, thanks to our great sponsors of IPS Packaging and Big Red Palmetto Store. John Rawl, thank you for tuning in and being part of Citadel Gray Line, a production of CRM Sports.